Did you see Allison, or did you hear from Allison at all this last week?
No. You can answer that. Yeah, no.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Is the arrest of Allison Chao's dad justice? Let's play back that clip again, slowly. The reporter says, "Did you see or did you hear from Allison at all this last week?" Jeffrey, Allison's father, stares blankly at the reporter, then glances to his lawyer. The lawyer whispering, "No, no, no." Jeffrey then turns to the reporter with kind of an unblinking stare and says, "No, no."
Did you see Allison, or did you hear from Allison at all this last week?
No. You can answer that.
When I first saw this footage on Tuesday, I didn't think Allison's father was being completely honest. And now it turns out neither do the Monterey cops. But is this the right decision to arrest the father in this case?
If you read on the thing, I am assisting with the matter. I'm telling her to go. Allison, you need to go.
Okay,
I'm not going.
You need to go.
How many times do I have to tell you I'm not going? She abused me. She hurt me.
Can you open the door?
No, I don't feel safe around.
I was advised that, look, I'm assisting and I am assisting.
Okay, can you open the door and maybe we could talk to her and have her get in the car?
No.
Before we get to the rest of this analysis, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, I'll be bringing out a really interesting video on Amanda Knox following this video. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Of course, we know that Allison recorded footage of her father totally backing her in a confrontation with the police. Although I saw a lot of support for Allison and for her father in the comments under that video, what was also clear was that the police were trying to operate within legal protocols and based on a warrant I believe they had with them.
Let me find it.
It's an order from a judge, and I don't really want him to remove you from both parents and place you.
Can I try calling my attorney? I know she's in court right now. Let me try to call my attorney right now.
I mean, it's a court order.
Let me.
So you heard what the officer said, it's a court order. Now, no matter whose side one is on, and certainly in this case one can feel, sentimental, and one can feel a sense of compassion for one side over another side. But in a situation where a child disappears and the police are called to find the child, I mean, in a situation that appears to be foul play, certainly to an outsider, if an adult, if a relative is providing sanctuary, even if that's what the child wants, that is not the prerogative of the parent. It is sometimes, unfortunately, the prerogative of the court. And until you have a sort of a long-term situation that has been resolved, that has got to be respected. That is the law. Sometimes it's fair, often it isn't. Even if Allison's dad's heart is in the right place, and let's face it, he does seem to be trying to look after the interests of his daughter. He does seem to be a loving father. Jeffrey hasn't only been arrested for child abduction, but also conspiracy, meaning he seems to, it appears that he was working with at least one or several other people, possibly relatives, and worse, made a false police statement by the looks of things. Now, although it seems all very serious, we don't know whether it's going to be taken further. It's one thing to, arrest someone. It's another thing to actually charge them. Now, at this point, it's hard to know what the details of the family dynamic actually are. It's hard to know what Allison's position in this whole dynamic actually are, except that we do know that Allison's parents have split up, and they seem to be at loggerheads. That much we do know. There does seem to be quite a intense custody thing going on. It also appears that Allison seems to want to be with her father and not her mother. But once again, according to the law, that choice isn't hers, but the presiding court's, certainly for the time being. And it seems the courts either have granted Allison's mother, Annie, custody or partial or joint custody. And I think the thing that is missing in this conversation is there has to be a reason, or one would assume that there's a reason, perhaps a good reason, that the courts granted Allison's mother custody. They must have done that based on some information, some common sense, certainly one hopes. Now, what I think is fascinating with this case is just a few days ago, when we didn't know very much about this case, when Allison was simply missing, and at that stage, I think she'd been missing close to a week. Some of us were wondering if Allison could have been abducted, perhaps by a stranger. Statistics ought to have assured us that, firstly, stranger abductions are very rare. By some accounts, just 7% of these kind of cases are perpetrated by strangers. In other words, by far the minority. So we should have been aware of that. Secondly, what is far more likely is that children are abducted or kidnapped by a close relative, especially in situations like this. Now, I don't think those really are the right words. You know, legally, technically, maybe they are, but certainly from the child's perspective, if the child wants to be with the person that they are with, then it's probably not that way. But according to the law, it is officially a kidnapping if the parent doesn't really have the right to have the child with them. Does that make sense? Now, the one aspect that can make, or certainly in this case, made the rare stranger kidnapping somewhat likely, right, in this case, was the fact that it seemed to have occurred outside, right? We know that Allison got on a bicycle and she cycled to her aunt's house. She was it was a route of at least 3.5 miles, which is not really that far, but that certainly could create a scenario of a potential situation, just like we had in the Charlotte Cena case. And in that case, it was a much shorter distance. Statistically, that is where most stranger kidnappings occur, outside, almost 6 out of every 10 cases, which is also why the Madeleine McCann case, if it was something like that, would be a complete anomaly, because barely 1/5 occur inside a residence or home, and even less in another building, such as a hotel, less than 20%. Now, in the Charlotte Cena case, also the bicycle was left discarded at the scene, which was an important indicator that a stranger had been involved there. In this case, a major clue was that was Allison's bicycle. Where is it? Wherever it is, someone felt it was important to take care of the bicycle as well. It's not like the bicycle was found somewhere. Just as it was important to take care of Allison herself. Now, if you think about it, that does suggest a relative, and now it seems like it was. A perpetrator who is a stranger isn't going to care about the child's feelings, certainly if they've got ill intentions. Whereas a family member typically would care about the child's feelings, and that sense of care would extend beyond the child to what the child cares about as well, her bicycle. It's kind of a longer term, wider sense of maintenance and caring about someone. Does that make sense? Now, in the Madeleine McCann case, instead of a bicycle that is stowed and looked after, there's a favorite toy of the victim found on her bed, but also apparently containing cadaver traces. Interestingly, news reports seem to suggest that Cuddle Cat had been moved to a place in Madeleine's bedroom, out of Madeleine's reach, which implied at the time that a perpetrator handled it, took it from Madeleine and placed it out of reach. Let me read this aspect from the news at the time. The paper quotes a police source saying, when Kate tucked Madeleine up in bed early in the evening, she had the toy tightly in her arms as she did every night. So Kate was terrified when she spotted it, that it had been left in a place too high for her to reach. Kate also noticed the window was wide open and the shutters jammed up. It was because of these things that she had no doubt Madeleine had been kidnapped, and she ran out to scream for help. Now, all of this is interesting, except that official police photos, don't show Cuddle Cat anywhere out of reach except in Madeleine's bed. And so what does that suggest? Well, it could suggest a couple of things, but one of them is it seems to suggest that a stranger took Madeleine and left Cuddle Cat behind, right? But if the stranger took a living Madeleine from her bed, why wouldn't Madeleine take Cuddle Cat? And how could there be cadaver traces on it? The Cuddle Cat scenario suggests, in my view, certainly the possibility of staging and a simulated abduction. I've written a couple of books on this case. It certainly is quite an interesting aspect to the Madeleine McCann case. Still unsolved, 17 years later. I'm not going to take it further than that. Let me know what you think in the comments about Allison's father. Is this justice? What do you think about it? Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next time.